One more time. Oh my God, how wonderful. Nice
Yeah.
voice, recording
Yes,
it.
everybody needs to hit
Yeah.
accept or whatever thing.
All right, so we are. I must say that I'm not very prepared today, even though I wanted to be prepared. But since I got involved in the Zoom, I just went inside of that world. So I'm just going to leave it to us, to the questions, and then we'll hopefully we'll answer all the questions that there are within ourselves. Yeah. So anybody wanted to start, or it's up to you, or just visit with each other?
Mary Pat, you had question from.
Yeah, I had a question hanging from the last.
The last Zoom, yes.
Zoom, which I thought maybe would be better to take the time to answer it tonight, probably. But about applying the 6-pointed stars into our practice. Because I've been working with that and I'm finding it really helpful, but I just wonder what you would have to say about that. And
I think this is very helpful because it gave us another point of reference in our consciousness to relate to the expansion, because the center of the matrix and the center of the tree of life are very wonderful, but there is only one line that allow us to have this system inside of ourselves. Even though the metrics of balance, it always had it, but the diamonds, what they do, the 6-pointed star, it reconnects the volume within the body. So then we are aware of the center through the volume, and through the volume we are aware of the center. So it creates another points of reference to be able to relate to the movements, since there is all really spatial directions that we are relating to, because we don't have a lot to sense in relation to the body, otherwise the natural sensation of ourselves. So, so that is, I think it's very helpful. I think that the most important thing, as I talked to you last time, was about that the main diamond, the first diamond that we're talking about, coming from balance and beauty, which is the right and the left side of your body, centralized at the heart, and it gets acknowledged in the crown, And so then, therefore, remember that the crown doesn't exist without the arm. So the crown is a natural result of the whole, and the whole is a natural result of the crown. So when we are in start the practice, if we start in 0 point, what we really saying, I acknowledging all the different formations that we call 0 point, which is your mind realizing the different planes and the different directions and the center of space and the the vertical centralization of your being from which the movement starts. So that preparation of 0 point already includes the balance of the balance and beauty, because that's what we're learning through all the movements, that balance and beauty, which is the balance of the right and the left and the heart, becomes the natural suspension of our the horizontal plane within those dimensions, but also the natural suspension that is the expansion of your heart as it relates to the throat, head, and crown. So we are expressing that relationship. So the idea that in the 0 point balance, that you can say, okay, the right and the left side of myself, even before I begin to start movement, the movement begins to really allow me to experience the crown in the natural vertical extension. Because then remember that the vertical extension is sort of a neutral, because in the moment that we start central crown and heaven and infinity, all those directions change, because the vertical extension become different planes within the head and the heart and different extensions of your being out of the result of the relationship of the whole. So the relationship of the whole becomes the natural extension of ourselves. The relations of the whole is the natural extension of ourselves. So then also in the second diamond, it is actually the right and the left and the head, which is the balance of the two sides of the brain, interrelating to the natural extension of your solar plexus. So that in itself is a wonderful thing to spend time. You know, sometimes we just sit in a chair, or sometimes become a moment still and I say, where am I? You know, my arms in relating to my heart, connecting to the crown, the right and the left of my head, which is actually the balance of the head and top of the atlas are connected to the solar plexus. And then the relationship of that becomes the natural release of my throat. The natural release of my throat is of extraordinary importance because it releases the cervical vertebra of the spine. You know, you're inside of a spiral. And then the balance of the throat and the opening of the throat is actually the fourth dimension. And it has all the connotations, the 13 names that exist within the unity in motion. The 13 names are the definitions, the new consciousness are the definitions of the opening of the throat. Because remember that the opening of the throat was a mystery within the ancient tradition. Remember in the tree of life, but also the opening of the throat, it opens the field for us to begin to understand for the first time that the word is not relative, that the word is absolute. So therefore, we begin to become more acquainted with what we said, what it is, what we think, what we express, because the way we recreate ourselves constantly is the way we express ourselves all day long. So anyway, that becomes the first Star of David, yeah? And then the second Star of David begins in the same place that it started the first one. It begins in balance and beauty, because that's a relation to the centralization of your heart. And that one interconnects from the pelvic floor. And the pelvic floor is a fantastic thing because it is the balance if you are standing. The pelvic floor is the balance between the right and the left and your legs. And it's the direct line of the center of gravity. It's Isaac Newton, the center of gravity implies to the center of the planet. So then remember that the centralization of your legs, the right and the left again, like the right and the left of your arms and the right and the left of your head, becomes the central point of balance within your physical body, that it allows the center of gravity to be the same point from which you expand in space. So the center of gravity and the center of expansion are the same. And the union between the two is the center moment, which is the actual moment of life, which is actually what we call 0 point, which is actually the center of the matrix. So that is a very, very important way to relate to that, yeah? Yeah, so those things, if you spend time with it, just by allowing the mind to be with them, the mind will create the map inside of you. And then when you have the map inside of you and the practice, you will notice, oh, I see the path of balance and the connections and everything. They are all parts of the same map that my mind is already manifesting. And when the mind manifests the pattern, then you have it forever. Because when the minds learn that, it will always be part of you, because the mind is that pattern. It is not like the tree of life is the mind is the tree of life. It's not like something that you added or something that you take. It's the totality of that. So that is the third triangle in the Star of David. And the fourth one then is actually the right and the right and the left and the pelvis connecting to the throat. I said it. So those are the two stars connecting. One connected to the center of the solar plexus, the other one connecting to the center of your throat. So they are very, very, I find it very helpful because, as I said, I took it for granted already that when we're talking about the matrix, and remember the matrix is the right and the left, the front and the back. And when the right and the left become clear in the balance, it is equal in the right, in the front and the back, as it is in the right and the left. Because since it doesn't have any point of reference in the body as compression, then the equality of all the directions manifests at that sphere. that I was telling you, the sphere of moon, the sphere of heaven, and the sphere of earth. Those spheres coming as the direct consequence or as a natural result of actually the natural balance that exists inside of your expansion. So they are not added, they appear naturally out of the natural relationship of it. Yeah. So let me ask, what else can I tell you about this? All this is going to help you. The most important thing to remember that once you develop the symbol will always be forever with you, because it's the same part of you. You never have to think about it. So what you're doing in the practice is clarifying all those directions and the natural sensation of your being, so your mind can transform or transmute any patterns that exist inside of the system that does not concord with the unity of all directions as one. So whatever it is in the body that is topsy-turvy or something, it will gently begins to release from the center of a space, and then the center of fascia, the center of muscles, the center of all the ligaments, they're all unwind inside of yourself. And when they unwind inside of ourselves, then the unwinding of the neurological reflexes is the same that the redirecting of the way that the brain and the mind interprets everything. Because the mind is nothing other than a natural spherical reflection of the neurological system and the skeletal system. So when one becomes more accurate, the other one begins to become accurate, and they all help each other until eventually they merge with you. And then when they merge with you, then you recognize that you are not exercising anymore, you're just practicing the motions that assist you to understand and experience your three-dimensional relationship to space. That in reality, when it becomes more and more clear, it becomes your relationship to the universe, because then you are inside of a system that encompasses all things. The balance of the planet Earth, the balance of the solar system, the balance of everything. And then what that means is that your non-boundaries in your physical self, the freedom within the physical self, is actually your mind naturally expanding, and your mind having a direct connection to the intelligence that we call universe. That is extraordinary and fantastic, and we are just beginning to have access to it. Because remember, we always have been inside of the planet Earth trying to make sense of everything. And even when we created things that they were called sort of a cosmic, in reality were innocent projections of trying to get to that place that now we are. So the cosmicity within ourselves is nothing other now than the unveiling of the brain within ourselves. So the mind assists us to understand what we consider to be universal, are actually being our own knowledge that is unfolding inside of the self that we are. Because remember that we were created in the image and the likeness. But that means that we share the same mind that it always was and ever always will be who we are, you know? So it's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. It's very important to remember as much as you can that we are just beginning to have access to that mind. Because then when you recognize that, you become an open field to be able to have different perceptions, awareness, experience that are no longer bound by the repetition of the endless Groundhog Day that we have been inside of innocently our human experience, because we all go inside of the same experience over and over again. And as we open more and more, we will have many more experiences that we make sense of it inside of ourselves. But then you recognize that it's the natural creativity of yourself that now is manifesting the new you, the new world, the new reality in which we're all partaking, that is so vast and enormous. So I encourage you to go there all the time. Yeah, wonderful. So anyway, should I?
That was beautiful.
I'm sorry.
Beautiful explanation.
Yes.
Yeah.
let me know if you want me to take you to the graphic to show you about the graphics a little bit or whatever. Just let me know, because I'll take you to it. It's up to you.
I would like to see the graphics with that.
The graphics. Okay, so then I'll take
I
you
wanted
to
you
that.
to talk a little bit also about, as Mary Pat was talking about the movements. And it occurred to me while I was moving, I was doing the movements, that the connection to the diamonds, I mean, to the diamonds in the Star of Day, in the stars of David, that connection through the delicate heart opens you out into the three-dimensional Star of David from foundation, and how that relates to that balancing that you were talking about, and the spirals of the energy.
That's a lot.
I know.
Yeah, that's a lot, because that's a lot.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So you know that the delicate heart, what we call the delicate heart, is the connection from foundation, in which we begin to open the energy and unfolding through the crown to the crown, because we're going to go either to heaven or either going to go to infinity. So then, as we unfolding, there is an instant in which the delicate heart appears, which is the moment in which the arms and the movement go from facing down to start facing up. So from facing down is the point in which it begins to face up. In the moment that the path begins to face up, and according to the structural formation, assists you to ascend to the crown, as you get into infinity, then, in that moment, the centralization of the solar plexus, which is the beginning of the first diamond, if you look at it from the first Star of David, the beginning of the solar plexus and the delicate heart, is the point in which everything opens, and it becomes, in this formation, if you wanted to say it that way, to infinity will become through the path, the right and the left of your heart, as it is connected from the solar plexus, the second spiral. It begins to appear inside of that form. And then if you go from there and it will continue descending into infinity, there will be a moment that the upper crown, which is the connection to the heart and the first diamond, begins to become horizontally centralized in yourself, from which then, if you're descending through the sphere, you are connecting to the second diamond, if you may as well, which is the heart and the crown, descending, changing the center of gravity. You can create an enormous amount of explanations inside of that formation. And eventually the mind will simplify everything, because the mind can become very complex inside of it. You know what I mean? And eventually, if the mind becomes very complex inside of it, then it creates, it takes you away from the union, because then you become to be so much involved in your head that you loses the realization that you are in the motion, also expressing yourself. Otherwise, it's completely mechanical. Yeah.
I mean,
The
it was
the
just
movement can become completely, perfectly mechanical, but then the mechanics will disappear, because there will be a moment in which the integration of yourself in the path of balance and in the movement will awaken yourself to the surface, and yourself, the third entity, and the yourself, your actual self, will come into the surface. And then when the self comes into the surface, the mechanism becomes the expression of yourself. And that is fascinating, because then you begin to understand that the expression of yourself is fantastic, because it's almost beatific, in the sense that the self experiences itself inside of its unity, and understand that it exists in its natural expression. That nothing is just a device of the mind or the energy of the structure. That all things coming together represents the fullest expression of your being. And it's beautiful because that is as that recognition is coming to the present, we recognize that that was the eternal nature of ourselves that always existed and will always exist. And that you are recovering now more and more in order to be able to be in the physical world, which always has been considered to be temporal, to be inside of the eternal existence, which is the knowledge of eternal time. And then as you get to be in that place, you get to be free from the idea of what's going to happen when I'm going to die or not die, where am I going, blah, blah, blah. All that disappears within your consciousness because you recognize that the actual moment of your self experiencing life is eternal, it's an eternal realization and an eternal happening. And it's eternal now because it is manifesting the new world. It's not only centralized inside of your experience. You are the manifestation of the new world and the divine paradigm and the fountain of life. So therefore, you get to experience the meaning of what Messiah means and all those ideas that we created, the deities and the Buddhas and all that. I'm telling you, you get to recognize that all that was an imagery in time designed inside of our evolutionary state to assist us to be able to get home. But once you get home, you become the actual enactment of that experience, and the experience and the fantastic feeling of being connected to life itself is much larger than the remembrance of any wisdom or any of the deities, because it becomes for the first time your experience, not your relating into some other part of yourself that carry that memory, but it becomes the real experience of you. And it's fantastic, it's beautiful, because that's the way you recognize that you are getting your home, because you are in the natural moment that correspond to the connection to your being with all things. Yeah? And it's a lot in the beginning, because in our human experience, we never thought about this too much. You know what I mean? We have moments in which we go to meditation, we get uplifted, we have a moment of fantastic experience, but we didn't have access to the place in which we can live inside of that reality 24/7. Yeah, and now we can, even though we have to make certain adjustments because, you know, certain parts of our family, people that we don't know, people who we just meet in the streets or something, they have no clue about all these things that we are experiencing, but we can be with them in the totality of the new world without having to really enter a conversation sometimes that it will just throw them out of the window, or they think you're weird, or what are you doing, or whatever, you know what I mean? So you become the master of your own expression, understanding that the expansion of your mind is so enormous and fantastic that you can share it, but you also have to understand that for certain beings it may innocently become confusing if they couldn't understand what you're talking about. So what you could do is to be present and find out if it is you can facilitate that in them constantly, and you can become present with the idea that if it's something you're supposed to say or do or assist somebody in words, that they will come to you, and that, you know, that's your only function is to enjoy it, the promised land, because that's what it is. You became the promised land. It's fantastic. So it's good to remember this, because it's a responsibility to be fully awakened. Yeah, because all of a sudden you feel everything, you know everything, you understand everything, you are with everything, and not only you understand what's going on, you also understand what's going to happen, in the sense that you will understand that everything will be perfect and reality will be fantastic and the world is a new world, and that everything has turned itself into 180 degrees, and we are inside of a sphere in which the world has manifesting itself in a completely different reality, even though as a first look, for moments, it feels like it's not, that everything is becoming sometimes even more confused or complex. And so it's just a form of understanding that all that is transmuting itself naturally because it has to, because it is. And that you are the one who, by understanding that, assisted to really not get entangled back into its own repetition of constantly repeating the same conflict and the same problem. Yeah. So anyway, Ellen, did I answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, yes, you did. And I think people wanted to look at the diagrams.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I'm taking you into right now. Share the screens. And sorry for the...
No, it's my fault.
No, it's all right. I mean, yeah. Okay, share the screen. So then let me go. Let me see where we are now. The diagram and the great Nancy wanted to. Oh, I'm not moving things correctly.
I think you have to just click on it first.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. That would make it much sense. Our beautiful angel here, fantastic. Here we are. So then, anyways, just look at it a little bit. I think this, I don't know how much time you spend with the metrics of balance, but the metrics of balance is a fantastic thing. And you do understand that the metrics of balance at the center is the tree of life, yeah? So you already passed through that door completely, right? It's not something that you hear. It's nothing that you already understand, that the center of the metrics of balance is actually the tree of life. Yeah, so I take it for granted that you already know that.
Yes.
Then if you're not, we'll have to really, and then what I was telling you before, that the sphere of heaven and the sphere of moon, the distance between those two spheres right here, you see that's above and this below, that's the throat, yeah? And then the sphere of moon or right and left of the heart, connecting to, if we go into the diamonds, but right now through the center of the tree of life, which is the center of the metrics of balance, the distance between here and here, between the shoulders and arm and pelvis and leg, is the natural distance that exists in your skeleton, facilitating the natural release of the solar plexus. So the release of the skeleton inside of its own neurological muscle formation into its natural state is the tree of life, is the metrics of balance, is all the planes that exist within the anatomical planes. Yeah, are you okay with that? I continue.
That's great. That's great. Thank you, Christy.
Yeah, it's important because I don't know if you really, sometimes when we see something, we see it as a symbol. And what I try constantly to assist you is to internalize the symbol. So you internalize the symbol through the connection, through the path, through the study. And then when you internalize the symbol, the mind will absorb it because it's not something that you added to your mind. It's something that you are revealing within the natural formation of the mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's
something that's there already, and we're
exactly.
just
Exactly. Even if the body is completely out of balance, meaning if the system is in a contraction inside of yourself, that symbol is always existing inside of the person because that's who the person is in their essence. So the physiology, oh my God, blah, 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 blah. But if the person, we will undo it, he will just flourish into his natural formation and it will bring the person to the full recognition of everything. But it's already present within the being. And if we can assist it to facilitate that, the presence of that in any state of balance only provides pleasure because it provides the pleasure of the resurfacing of the self, the resurfacing of the self. Yet the self is who we were, always are, and who always will be. So now, remember that the tree of life, before there was the right and the left, now here became the front and the back. Yeah, so the tree of life, the way that was presented in the garden was an image, a two-dimensional image of a three-dimensional reality. Yes? Yeah, so then once we understood the three-dimensional reality inside of the two-dimensional image, we return it into the garden. So we can say that the entire voyage of the entire consciousness of our humanity was to transform something that it was introduced as a symbol, as a two-dimensional image, a two-dimensional center of an image, and then transform it in the understanding of all the components that allow to be in the sphere of life, which is 3 dimensions interconnecting everything within yourself. So the front and the back and the right and the left became equal inside of ourselves. That's the center of space. And all the anatomical planes are synchronized into one instant, and the one instant being the continual relationship of ourselves in 3-dimensional space. Yeah, the same thing as the poem that we were talking about last time. The poem about Hermes expressing the Magnus Opus. Yeah, here is the graphic that Carolina made it for us. In which the right and the left, in orange is the same as the right and the front and the back and the yellow, and then we are in the 3-dimensionality of it. Yeah, and then here you can see if we go from here to here, you will have the 3-dimensional Star of David from here to here. They are all existing inside of that formation. So it's very good to spend time, because the mind will love it when the mind said, oh, I see. You mean that I'm transforming something that was 2-dimensional into something that is 3-dimensional. And that 3-dimensional transformation is actually me, that then I can really connect inside of it in myself, in which the inside and the outside can become the same, that I'm connecting to a greater reality that I never thought that I could have. And this is fantastic. So anytime that you spend with that, your mind will guide you, because your mind loves, your mind, the nature of the mind is to unravel any mystery or to find a way through everything that it seems to be complex or difficult. Because the mind originally was created inside of a perfect mind that understands all things, is all things, and create all things. This is the real mind that we're talking about. Then the evolutionary mind, yeah, go ahead.
Chrissy, when you say that the tree of life was
a 2-dimensional symbol,
was 2-dimensional. Now, are you talking about, when you're talking about the tree of life in this way, are we talking about the Kabbalah, that the symbol of the Kabbalah with the dimensions and all of that? And then from the Kabbalah is the tree of life, and then the matrix, the way that I understand it, then the matrix is the 3-dimensional rendering of the tree of life.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
So are you saying that it was 2-dimensional because it was just the symbol of the Kabbalah, or
no?
Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a little bit complex, because in reality, the tree of life is the center of everything, the center of the sphere of life, the center of all things. But in the way that we humans comprehend things, like from the 2-dimensional perspective, because we were guided too much to understand something from inside out. In our evolution, we see things like flat, here and here, look at it. So then from that perspective, the tree of life is just a symbol that we can understand that it's the physical body. But if I said to anyone, it is the physical body, but it's also the 3-dimensional relationship of the physical body, I think it will be very difficult for anybody to understand what that means.
But what symbol are you using when you say the tree of life is a symbol?
Oh, I mean, it's a symbol. It's because
what does the symbol look like? Are you talking about the Kabbalah?
No, the Kabbalah was another in time. The Kabbalah was another expression of trying to understand the 2-dimensional symbol from a larger perspective, but he never really actually got into the 3-dimensionality of it.
Well, so what does the 2-dimensional symbol look like?
Okay, so then I'll tell you. So can I bring you back a little bit? So let me see if I can bring you back into this here. So I tell you what does a two-dimensional symbol look like. So let me see, I'll get you into I think that if I get you to this, thank you for the quick question, right here. This is a two-dimensional symbol. You see right here, this is a two-dimensional symbol because it is flat. It doesn't give us the understanding that the distance that exists between here and here, it exists between the front and the back right here as well. And that all the distance of polarities are equal in their width as they are equal in their front and back. So then this particular symbol is the center of a three-dimensional relationship to space. Does it answer any questions or anything that am I confusing you? Can I go more? Or it's something that two-dimension means something that I look at it that it has no dimensionality to assist me to understand that it's not like a flat image, that is actually a three-dimensional formation in all directions of the center of a space.
Well,
so then,
when you see pictures of the Kabbalah, I mean, it's basically that design.
Yes, it's exactly that. But remember,
and it's two-dimensional because that's the way it was
it is two-dimensional. Yeah, absolutely. Remember that the Kabbalah, the farther that it could go, the Kabbalah in it was extraordinary system that it became ancient because so many people have so many different add-ins to it and searching from it and everything. And I don't think that it was built to be able to introduce us to the moment of eternal existence, to the natural moment of life. Was built to introduce us to go to many different places within the mind to understand different formations of consciousness within universal reality, I think, because that you have to ask people who are involved for years and years. And I don't think the Kabbalah ever became fully fulfilled until the moment that the consciousness merged, because that was the first time that all the different processes and ideas and dimensions and projection became simultaneously reunited at the moment itself. And then the Kabbalah became actually the natural moment of life and disappeared, like poof, into this new reality in which it became not the process of ascension inside of overall linear projection, but the process of experiencing ascension as the natural experience of our human selves. So all the process dissolved itself. I'm sorry, then go ahead.
I'm thinking about art and the history of art and the point where perspective began, where artists began actually being able to draw like a three-dimensional perspective, and so that the images, gave the impression of being three-dimensional instead of flat, like they would have been in like some of the old medieval type paintings and folk art and stuff. So
yes.
Yes. That you think you would identify that as the beginning of a change in consciousness?
Of course, yes. That was the beginning of ourselves, be able to see things in perspective instead of just seeing in a two-dimensional form. Mm-hmm. And then the best that we could really become acquainted with that, the more the figure became alive. And the art became alive because it has a perspective inside of the person who is painting it that is relates to everything. Yeah.
And yet they did people have always done sculptures that are three-dimensional.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Before painting became.
Yes, absolutely. Because it was easy then, because they were working with an element that it was three-dimensional in its nature. But then paintings and graphics and all that, you're working with a system that is just only flat. But returning to Carolina's question, Carolina, the reason that it was a symbol, because with the ancient writings that we have in our human consciousness, the symbol that always existed within the with the ancient tradition was the symbol of this symbol that we see here, the tree of life. But we never really actually could comprehend it as being the center of the sphere of life, or the center of the dimensions, of the real center of our equilibrium. You could say that to everyone, but they will never know what you're talking about. They will, the mind will interpret it.
In the way that I have thought of it is that the Kabbalah was actually the oldest symbol that had this tree of life, but you're saying that it was before the Kabbalah there was this
absolutely
symbol?
Oh yes. The tree of life was the beginning ancient first symbol of the whole symbol.
Do we have that? I mean, how do we know that? Do we have it?
We have it in our graphics in a way that I don't know how to answer that. I don't think we have it in our Zoom copy or taking it from the traditional rendition that we have, but definitely there is a traditional rendition.
And
the closest that you can get to it,
it certainly predates religion. That's for sure. You know, that idea of the tree of life, it certainly predates religion of any kind. So
yeah.
What about the flower of life, though? Isn't that connected with it?
The flower of life, no, it's not. It is connected with it because the tree of life existed within the flower of life.
Yeah.
But the flower of life was another symbol as ancient as the tree of life that came into being from another avenue, because it was more from not from the Jewish tradition, but it was more from the Islamic tradition, perhaps. I don't know.
Well,
But
it
I
was
think
way back in like the Assyrians, way before Islam or the whole Judaic tradition started. That it was in way more ancient.
It was all one in that sense. But in this book, for example, this is the first time that I really became in my studies in it. There is an ancient book, I don't know what page it's now, but they have the actual rendition of the actual let me see what's the word, the national place in when Adam got really actually buried. I mean, it was created by human, of course, in the hundreds and hundreds of years ago. But in the rendition of Adam being buried in that, it says that along with the burial of him, they buried the symbol of the tree of life to be able to sing, to exist forever, to eventually, they don't use that, but it is a symbol to become again present when the moment comes for us to understand that all the symbol that we carry within some aspects of our consciousness, because it had to do with Genesis and the Bible and some aspects of our consciousness say that the Adam was created as perfect, and that that was the prototype experience of our humanity, and that it's self-contained with it itself. I don't know all the attributes you could say, but in that time, I don't even think that it would say that. But what happens is that once we, through time and through the evolution of our minds, we begin to comprehend in religions and so forth that the actual original symbol that is called the original imprint, it was really actually the entire depiction, not only of who we were, but who we are as we become reinstated inside of that experience. So we are now, each of us is the reinstatement of that experience inside of a universal reality that no longer is confined inside of the human reality as it has experienced inside of the planet Earth only. Because recently the experience in a human only has been very, very confined for us because we didn't have any place to go. Yes, the only part and place that we can go in the human experience is to write stories and movies about Star Wars. Yeah, because we didn't have any way to repeat the entire evolutionary innocent confusion of duality inside of countless ways of repetition that it will never be resolved inside of that, because now they are resolved inside of unity. So I don't know, am I confusion when I say that this is a two-dimensional symbol and that is flat but also can you understand that this two-dimensional symbol, it can be understood as being the centralization. If you think in the between here and here, you see that sphere that it goes into here. It exists in here too. It exists in between the front and the back. Yeah. So then if the width of the sphere is the same in the right and the left as the front and the back, then you can understand that how the front and the back, that it will be, that's the reason we put it in the matrix, that the front and the back right here, it will be the three-dimensionality of the whole, of the centralization of the sphere inside of 3 dimensions. Yeah.
Christy?
Yeah.
Christian, going back to the original symbol of the tree of life, I'm not sure that we have made it clear in our presentations here, like in the Zoom meetings and all of that, exactly what is meant, or what you have meant by what the tree of life is, because the way that we have the presentations have come forward, we always equated the Kabbalah, you know, as the tree of life in the presentation. So I think that this is an area that we can just elaborate a little bit, some place to really explain that the tree of life symbol goes back to Adam or whatever, and
Well,
show
Genesis,
maybe showing some graphic of that.
Wonderful.
You know,
I think
to make that really clear.
So
You know,
Carol, I know that there is one of the presentations, I think it's one of the first ones. It has those graphics on it.
Yeah, it has the Kabbalah.
And truthfully, I mean, we as students, we've been through it a few times, even in as far back as the you know, being in Pittsburgh, and you know, Christian's been talking about it for a while. But yeah, I mean, if you want to,
I think it would be good to, we'll find out, we can do it, because in reality, what we always say is that the tree of life is all the symbol that exists within our human consciousness. And the Kabbalah is not the oldest symbol. The Kabbalah came hundreds and hundreds of years after, when people began to really trying to study perhaps the tree of life and trying to figure it out, the meaning behind this original symbol. And then it becomes
in my experience with the involvement of the story of unity and motion in your discovery, it's that an emphasis has been put on, at least in my own understanding, an emphasis has been put on your discovery that the Kabbalah was a symbol that was also a symbol of the human body. You know, so one of your earliest discoveries was that the Kabbalah and the dimensions didn't come right away, but the Kabbalah was actually a symbol of the human body. So and we talked about the Kabbalah being the tree of life.
Oh, I see. So then it must be something that, you know, I don't know what to say, because in my understanding,
maybe I'm the only one that is not clear about this.
I thought of it that way.
Got that information. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, maybe that's what it is, because in reality, the tree of life, it always, every time that I thought about the human body is the tree of life, I never thought that the human body is the Kabbalah in my own self, because the Kabbalah is really is something completely different. They are all aspects of consciousness trying to unravel the ancient human and trying to understand the meaning of that reality.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is that you saw the Kabbalah and you saw it as that. You saw it as you placed it on the human body.
Very possible.
Yes,
But,
yes,
Mhm.
I understand that.
But originally, when I saw the tree of life for the first time, that was the time that I understood that that was the human body. And then
When you saw the Kabbalah.
no, when I saw the tree of life for the first time.
Okay, so that
When-
I didn't know that. I thought when you saw the Kabbalah, because then we have pictures from the very earliest books of
Yes.
the Kabbalah, and then the putting the Kabbalah on the human frame. So we don't. That's, you know.
Well, in reality, yeah.
I think it might be just, it may be a little confusing for you to, but anyway, the tree of life came through the Kabbalah, but the tree of life is not the Kabbalah. I mean, Kabbalah is something, you know,
Yeah.
broad and huge, and, you know, it's a whole thing, a whole system. And but I think you're talking about the tree of life, and you saw the one that was in, you know, the Kabbalah. So
And
Yeah, I
then,
thought-
the Kabbalah has the 10 dimensions, and you
Yeah.
worked with those 10 dimensions and brought them into our unity in motion,
Oh.
the
Mhm.
updated 10 dimensions of the
Oh,
Kabbalah.
I'm sorry. So that was a misunderstanding then. So let me clarify it. Let me clarify everything. The Kabbalah doesn't have dimension. They have something called Sephiroth. And the Sephiroth are spheres inside of it and represent different stages of consciousness. And I wasn't a very devoted student of the Kabbalah, because when I went to go inside of it, I saw that it was an extraordinary complex system, that it was not necessarily geared to bring me into the present moment of reality. It was geared to bring me a certain kinds of understandings about different dimensions and different senses within the self, but not to bring myself into that reality, and not to bring humanity into that reality. So it became an esoteric system that it was so enormous. And I thought that it's very beautiful. You can spend times and lifetimes studying it, but I understood that what I needed to do in my own experience, or what I wanted to do, or what everything was called for, is to transmute these ancient systems into the reality, or prepare it for the reality
Exactly.
that can always exist in the now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's exactly what I've always thought.
Yes, yeah, but the
I always
system is
thought-
beautiful, but the system has different interpretations. They have like certain places that they call, I don't know, different names in it that divide us into different worlds and lower worlds in which things become different and so forth. And I understood that to be valid, if you may, inside of the system of evolutionary consciousness. But I knew always that those things could not exist in the reality itself, because in the reality itself of unity, I always knew that it wouldn't be higher and lowest and in different degrees. It will be the oneness of reality itself, that it will allow us to be in the present moment without being split inside of the mind system into different partitions that did not allow the self to become real within the physical world.
Exactly.
So we didn't have a reality. Yeah.
And so in a way, you know, by taking the Kabbalah and if you will, updating it, it was the Messiah. The Messiah, it was here. You know, it wasn't just on a flat piece of paper that was the Kabbalah. You know, everything came to life. And the 10 dimensions came to life in a different way.
Because
I always thought of it kind of as a progression, you know, but maybe that's not a correct way to look at it.
Yeah, that's it. You're right. That's it. That's exactly what happened. So then the most important thing, that the 10 dimensions were not progressional unfoldings of consciousness. They never were. And the moment they appear, in the moment and transmuted everything, they became absolute 10 expressions existing inside of the field of unity, that they were not linear and sequential, as we were considered linear and sequential in our linear mind and evolution. They were simultaneous. And that was a very complex for us to understand, because the mind can comprehend something, okay, this is A, then this is B, this is C, this is D, and then the mind can learn something like that. But what it was bringing is inside of a system that already self-contained, all of it, and is instantaneously whole, and it exists as a new consciousness, because it is a quantum entanglement of the entire physics. It is the reality itself.
So it's also a sphere.
I'm sorry?
It's also the sphere.
Yeah, the sphere,
So
of
the
course,
sphere
became the
is-
sphere.
So
Yeah.
it's always self-contained.
Well, yeah, but I remember that in the moment that I could always keep telling you that, let me see, because I wanted to complete this before I go into something else. So let me see about something else that I need to tell you about this, about the difference between, not difference. It's not the Kabbalah became dismissed or anything. Is that the Kabbalah, with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of study and people and so forth, became honored and fulfilled, because it became transposed into the reality of that particular projection.
Exactly.
Yes,
And that's unity in motion, right?
exactly. You understand that that's the difference.
I get it.
That's the reason that I said that when the consciousness came in, it didn't make anything obsolete. It just uplifted, and they became the actualization of a linear projection that could not house the actual experience of that sentiment. It only
became three-dimensional.
I'm sorry?
It became three-dimensional.
Yeah, it became three-dimensional. So that's the reason that I said that the tree of life as a two-dimensional rendition was a symbol in the Garden of Eden. If I were to say it, I've said it that way, it was a symbol of the Garden of Eden, that it was given to us as humanity, and it was preserved in the moment that we transposed ourselves into dualistic consciousness. The tree of life became covered with apart on the story, as the story, with the tree of good and evil. So in the moment that the tree of evil became covered, we enter the discovery of the mind, forever searching, trying to understand the meaning of wholeness and the meaning of home. But the tree of life, through the spirit, was always preserved as the original imprint that houses the whole of our being. So what happens is, when the tree of life became actualized by the new consciousness as a sphere inside of 3 dimensions, inside of the sphere, when we saw the tree of life and said, oh, I see, that is the center of the sphere itself, inside of dimensions, inside of different formations of our consciousness that encompasses all things. So we have completed in honor and fulfillment the entire projection of the tree of life, and we brought it back into the actual reality that is his actual honoring. We have honored it. So if you wanted to say we became the Messiah, yes, of course, because inside of the story of the unfolding of human, the Messiah was a projection of an idea of a receptor of a consciousness that it was not subject to the good and evil or the dualistic consciousness of the mind, that it was really a new world that it will honor not only the Jewish people as the chosen race, but also the entire human existence into a new form of understanding, experience, feeling, all of it into a new world in which we get to be in the Garden of Eden one more time, but this time with the whole understanding, feeling, and experience of what that means. Because remember that I can say that when we were in the garden, we were just in an experience of ecstasy, but we didn't know what that was. So the entire voyage of the tree of life was to bring us back into the original fulfillment, but more, because now the garden, instead of being the original garden, the idea of the original garden, like Bonita existing now in Hawaii, in the garden becomes the universe. So we are inside of the greatest garden ever existing, from which we get to be united as the image and the likeness, as the intelligence, as the presence, as the reality, with a mind that is infinite in its nature, that is so vast and so precious that it's overwhelming, but at the same time it's natural, because it's the very mind that is inside of this system that always existed and will always exist. And it will always be perhaps celebrated as being the very symbol that it brought us back home. So because now we're home, and the symbol of the tree of life became the actual formation of our physical bodies. That's it. Yeah.
Can I ask a question here?
Yeah, darling, go ahead. Somebody's asking a question.
Well, if someone is starting from the beginning, is it possible to start from the whole picture and go backwards into all of this? Because rather than start from the very beginning of it and go through all to describe the wholeness, the oneness, and I mean, isn't the fountain of life?
Yes, the fountain of life will be because that's exactly what Nancy, what you said. You said that we have the sphere, that we are three-dimensional. The tree of life will bring us to the three-dimensional sphere. But the three-dimensional sphere is the only possibility of our mind's comprehension, the boundless state of not being self-enclosed inside of a sphere. So I say that again. The sphere of life is the only, with all the planes of three dimensions and all the study that we have, is the only possibility for the mind to be able to comprehend that its self-containment is the door from to the infinite connection to everything. Because the mind, the linear mind that we have, can only comprehend something if it is defined in a certain way. If you tell them that everything is infinite, the mind said, what does it mean? So the sphere is the self-containment from which then have total communion with the fountain of life that doesn't have a self-containment. It is actually the union of everything simultaneously as one, and the union of the universe expanding into infinity. So you cannot self-contain the universe, because the universe is constantly becoming, eternal becoming. That's what it means to be eternal. That's what we mean to be ourselves. So the sphere, it is this what we call the physical phenomenon that always was given, gravity, expansion, and the moment of life. It was the gift that always were given, a gravitational connection to all things and love, to be able to return to the fountain. And that's what happened. The moment that we connected with the new consciousness, we became the fountain of life. We didn't become the sphere. We became the fountain of life, and we understood the nature of three dimensions. Yeah, because the fountain of life is actually the fulfillment of three dimensions as 4 dimensions. But the sphere itself as 3 dimensions can only become real understood by us as being ourselves through the new consciousness. We can never understand it otherwise. It was just like a beautiful exercise of mathematics, a beautiful exercise of physics, a beautiful exercise of the mind, comprehending and blah, 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 blah forever, without understanding that analogy, understanding, perception is actually the actual unity of your own self, looking at it not as an external projection, but as an internal reflection of your own unity. Yes, remember that we began to understand that. Yeah, do I need to repeat that again? It's okay? Because it's a lot what I'm saying. But yeah, it's very important because The reality of 3 dimensions and the fountain of life is what allow us for the first time, our human, because we are the fountain of life, to be able to come to the surface of reality.
Yeah.
And in the surface of reality, we understood that everything that it was projected existed inside of ourselves, that it was a reflection to unify us, uplift us, fulfill us, the gift, the garden, recovering the garden means that everything was already created. And even the moment of union of the harmonic conversion was predicted in the instant that we left the garden, of course. And then when we enter the garden again, now we're going through the whole transformation of what that means. But this time, for the first time, the self has become realistic for us. Yeah. Remember that in the evolutionary nature of our consciousness, the farthest that we could go in the conceptual nature of our unfolding is the endless discussion existing between self and no self, between the ego and the higher self, and on and on and on. We didn't have access to the self becoming present with the moment of life. We didn't have access to be the Messiah. We didn't have access to be the Christ, to be the Buddha. But even that, it could never be, because we are more than that. We are the representation of that memory in its fulfillment, in which the new world is extraordinary, manifesting a new everything for the whole of humanity. It's not subject to the individual. It's a completely new consciousness. This is not a beautiful thought about the possibility of unity or consciousness or spirituality or reality. What we're talking about is the reality itself, a new world inside of in the honoring and fulfillment of a world that have existed for millions and millions of years, self-enclosed inside of its own system, desperately trying to return home. And now, for the first time, it's home. And guess what? We are the recipients of home. It doesn't exist as a concept. It's each of us are the home. So, because we are the fulfillment of all things. Yeah. So, but it helps you to understand, because if you it's complex, because in our humanity could never entertain the notion that we were the very thing that we were worshiping. Do you know what I mean? The mind of linear time could never comprehend that.
But can someone now, with people that have the self, can you guide someone to start from the self that they are, but they don't know they are?
I think that will be the most important thing to really do, because then if you tell somebody that they can begin in the finished essence, then the process that they get them to understand what that means, it will not be laborious. It will be nothing other than recovering all the pieces they already have.
That was my question.
Yeah, it will not be laborious. It will be the process of recovering all the pieces that you already have, and the recovering will be the augmentation of the freedom of the senses, or more beauty, or more sensation, or more loveliness, or more synchronicity, or more love, or more consciousness. It will become not the pain or having to use the intellect to finding the labyrinth back home. And it will become the ecstatic experience of unveiling all the different stages of the union within the self, from which then everybody can have time and fun all the time. Because when you practice unity in motion, you will not say, oh my God, when are going to learn those movements? Because every single connection, every single path will become another part of your unity. So then you can learn it. But if you tell them, if you start from the end, the beginning, it's difficult, because by that time and the end and the beginning are the same. But let's say if you start from the end, it will be more likely that somebody can really become united than if you're trying to start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they don't have an understanding how the beginning and the end became one already.
Yeah.
I think
how one end, they don't understand even the reality of the linear mind at all. We understand the linear mind now, but we didn't understand it when we were in it. Not really. How
No,
do-
we didn't understand the linear mind. We
yeah.
didn't understood that we were actually being thought. That's what I keep saying, that the linear mind was a process in which we were all united constantly, but we were inside of a system that had millions and millions of projections, and it had no way to create sanity other than certain moments of sanity, and then going back to the same story. So we couldn't really actually gather ourselves together and discover what the unity of self was, until the moment that the new consciousness took over. And then, oh, I see, it's what I always will be, we're always going to be. So the unity of the self becomes the landing, if you may, the landing and the regeneration of each of us, because each of us are the whole thing. We are the thing itself. Yeah, Nancy, I'm totally agree with you. And maybe that's the reason it's happening, that we're doing all this work somehow, because all this exposition that we have created within the Zooms is actually a whole scenario that if somebody were to spend time with it, will say, oh, wow, you know, you're telling me that blah, 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 and now I can do blah, 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 and blah, blah. So they will have a vision to begin inside of the union, from which then the questions, that whatever arises, it will be inside of a frame of reference. There will always be the union. It will not be inside of the linear reference trying to figure it out. What does it mean inside of what I know? Yeah, it's completely different world, completely. Yeah, so we'll do that. I mean, I don't know, we'll find out. It is doing us. The consciousness is doing me. But what I mean by that is that I am the consciousness. Of course, I couldn't have access if I am not that. But also, it is so much larger in its all-encompassing sense that I think that life will bring it in the synchronicity of it. If it is something that it could be shared as information. But what I'm telling you is that when we are having this conversation, all of us, and we are going through all these stages in understanding, we are liberating the mind from its confusion. Because the mind that we're talking about, it occupies everything. So everybody on the whole planet, in the instant that I'm talking to you, in some degree, are getting connected to it. Now, I don't know what that connection will show it up for them. In the moment, maybe it will be ecstatic. In the moment will be a recognition of something they need to change in their life, or a recognition of something that they have to eat, or there's something that they have to do, because every being is different. But what I'm telling you is that we are participants, all of us, all of you and I, into the new world. Not as a dogma, because you can never exist. The new world is the absence of dogma, because it's wholeness with unwholeness, and it's unity. So unity can never have any dogma, but we are the new world. So we'll see how it shows up, but we're doing it. The conversations that we're doing with each other right now is an extraordinary, it's what it have taken hundreds and hundreds of years in evolution to be able to bring us to where we are right now. So every time we have a meeting, it cuts hundreds and hundreds of years of a story of our human unfolding and releases us back into its natural state. Because we are present, we understand what we're talking about. We are outside of belief. Yeah. Remember that the most important thing that you need to understand, if there's anything that I would like to say to you, is that unity in motion has no dogma. Why doesn't have any dogma? Because dogma is something that innocently doesn't understand yet, something that exists, that doesn't understand that it already exists and its fulfillment. And when it doesn't understand that already exists in its fulfillment, it expresses the difficulty to get to its fulfillment. And it thinks that going through the difficulty, you will get to the fulfillment. And usually the innocent complexity is that because it is based on us and them, between us and them, and yes and that, it's always polarized within itself. So the absence of dogma is the mind that is free from the divisions inside of its whole structure, inside of its whole feelings. So the new consciousness is the most divine thing, because it only because it is its own existence. So now think about how fantastic. The new consciousness came into being in one moment. It becomes the whole spectrum of its unity among a world that was divided into billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of interpretations that was not self-contained inside of the reality itself. They were approximating in different degrees, but they never existed before. So just understand that. So understand why is it that you are inside of this field, and why you don't have to do anything or you can do everything. To really assist everything, assisted is not the word. To allow, no, not the word. To
Encourage.
No.
Guide.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Guide.
Say that again.
Help. Guide.
You could say, but it's more than that, because to be, the guidance comes as a consequence of being in the new consciousness. Because the being is the guidance to everything, because you are actualizing the reality itself. And when you actualize the reality itself, everything will match itself more and more and more.
How about invite?
I'm sorry?
Invite.
Enlight?
Invite.
Invite. Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. The inviting will be a good, because usually you invite someone to have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
You will never invite somebody who not to have a good time. So, which is true. So then you can invite anyone to say, okay, you would like to partake of, you would like to understand something that can, in some degree, give you extraordinary experience of unity, beauty, all the 10 dimensions, and have the most fantastic time and feel connected to life in the present moment forever, and be assistant to the entire world to manifest a new world and have the greatest time in your entire life. I think that most of the people will say yes. You know, I mean, if somebody says no, you will say, okay, thank you, I'll see you later. You know what I mean? Well, because eventually that's it. It's not something that is subject to yes or no. The new consciousness cannot be say yes or no, because it is the center between those two, and it's the reality of its own existence. So it's not subject to agreement or disagreement or any of that. You know what I mean? It is the field itself. So anyway, yeah, we have a few minutes more. Yeah, darling, go ahead.
Let's say someone says to you, then, okay, I'd like to do that. Where are you going to start now?
Then I will say, okay, I will say, you know, the best way to start is knowing that you're already perfect, but also if you would like to go to the Zooms, unityinmotion.com, start there, you know, and look what it is, and then notice there is a different language, and then if you notice there is a different language, just translate it a little bit to find out the words that we are using. And then if you have any questions about these words, call Bonita, call Nancy, call Ellen, call Carolina, call Mary Pat, call every one of us, you know, just call me and ask, because we will be able to tell you, assist you. Yeah, we are here to assist everyone. So anybody who in any degree would like to be able to be free from any state of confusion in their lives in any form, they have access now, because the consciousness is here. Or ask the divine. The divine will guide you.
Yeah. The Zoom meetings plus the movements.
Oh, the movement, of course, the movement. And that's a wonderful thing, because you are teaching, and you can begin to teach. Any of us, I can begin to teach, and maybe in the beginning of the year, I will begin to teach too. I don't know, whatever, we'll see. But it's difficult to express, but it's not. Let me just tell you in a few words. I think the most important thing for me, this is in myself, this is my own personal experience, that I was always searching, and I told you the entire story of my life since I was a child, to understand, feel, and experience, and allow myself to return home, and feel in some way that by doing that as well, allow every single other being to return home. Because I always thought that it only takes one of us. But of course, inside of the linear mind, to say that you are the one it's sacrilegious, of course. So immediately it's dogma, right? Inside of that mind. So you couldn't say it because it creates confusion. But inside of my experience is that once I asked for it and I went through all the stages, the various stages gave me the whole field. And when I asked for the whole field, I wanted to understand the consciousness of it. Of course, I wanted to understand the body and the experience and the access, but I wanted to understand the consciousness because I wanted to understand how my mind can exist inside of a mind that is not bound by its own perception, that existed inside of a field that is constantly empowering, honoring, fulfilling, creating, that is not inside of the coming and the going. Because I understood that in the linear mind, we were always imprisoned inside of the mind that always repeat itself forever and ever and ever. And no matter what, we can't get out. So I understood, okay, we must get out. So then when I entered that, the mind embraced me. And when embracing me, they showed me that it was different, that it was not the mind that it can be interpreted from the realms of duality, that it was a mind that existed inside of its own existence. And I say, oh yeah, of course, I go there, of course. So then when I entered it, it showed me all the aspects of its unity. And when it showed me all the aspects of its unity, oh, you show me, I am that. It's not a big deal, it's just what it is. So unity and motion became fulfilled and honored by the whole spectrum of consciousness that engages the intelligence, that engages the feeling, and then engages the movements of unity and motion, the physical movements in which the human body experiences itself inside of the beauty of all things, the perfection of your being. So anyway, that's what it is. That's where we are at. And you have been instrumental. We created it together, all of you, because from the beginning, you became the scenario in which the mind expressed itself to eventually return to its wholeness. And here we are right now. We are in the wholeness. And we'll find out what is next now, because it would always be wholeness within wholeness. It would always be beautiful. It would always be perfect. And maybe everyone will understand unity and motion eventually, because they will say, okay, infinity, heaven, all those things means actually a connection inside of my being that allow me to feel good, that allow me to feel connected, that allow me to feel perfect. So it will dissolve and it will disappear from an exercise. And it will be nothing other than the natural practice to contact the meaning of the fountain of life and the meaning of the whole consciousness.
Not only of an adventure, Carol says we're on this great adventure, not only on that, not only in the great perspective, but you might have a lot of fun too. You start laughing and dancing and doing kind of outrageous, weird things.
Well, I think that fun.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm with
fun,
you, Nancy.
Everything, and the new consciousness, everything is fun because everything is the reflection of the beauty of everything. So it's not like we have to look for certain things in relation to have fun from any state of confusion. It's just that it's the natural thing. But I don't know. I can only tell you what is fun for me. Right now, this is my personal experience, and I am perhaps indulging myself, and I have to complete with it by saying that right now for me, fun is to be able to remain in the field. I'm remaining all the as much as possible in the field, and I said as much as possible because I have to attend certain things sometimes that it take me away. I have to talk to the lady that gave me my insurance, or I have to really go this and blah 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 blah. All those things on the phone. I'm away at the computer, so I have to really attend all aspects of my life. But most of the time, I spend it in the infinite because it's the place that I have more fun, to tell you the truth. And I'm sure that all of you have the same experience. So life is becoming an art because we are attending all aspects of life that corresponded to our evolutionary taking care, but also we are experiencing all the things that already existed inside of our own ecstasy. So then by doing that, all the things that evolutionary being taking care becomes easy as well. Because wherever I call, everybody answered me. And I said, what do you need? Or you need something? You know, believe me, everything that I have to attend that before was a little bit complex, now it's simple because everybody wants to help me. It's beautiful. So anyway, I think that we are done. I think it's almost an hour and a half. But, and how are you doing? We're doing good? Let me just get out of here.
Here, Christy, and then we can.
Yeah, I'm going to have to leave right now because duty is calling me.
Oh, absolutely.
But I love you all, and it was wonderful to be here. Thank you, Christy. I love it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I love it. We are addicted to each
I'll see
other.
you next time.
We are the reflections of each other's perfection.
I know.
Thank you, darling.
I love you.
I love you. I
Bye.
love you.
Bye,
That's
bye.
wonderful. Bonita, we love you. You're back in the
Bonita,
screen.
what do you have on your head?
Background there, yeah.
Oh, there
Looks like
she is.
she's got a crown on her head.
Indeed.
Bonita, oh, it's something growing out of.
It's a palm tree growing out of her head.
So it looks like a princess.
Oh, she has that ocean. Oh, look how beautiful it is. Oh my goodness. How wonderful. Wow.
Lovely, no? Hawaii, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
The garden, you're in the